What you writing?
Writing a poem about us.
Yeah? Let me hear it.
My name is Zachary Conan. If you enjoy videos like this, please consider subscribing to my channel to keep up with what I'm doing and what I'm covering. Today, I'm talking about a red-blooded American masterwork. Bonnie and Clyde is the epitome of high-class American cinema, so long as what we consider high-class American cinema means excess as fine art and absurdity as brilliant poetry, a high-octane attack on highbrow posturing. Bonnie and Clyde is a genuine work of art. It has served as the demented template for all future Lovers on the Lamb stories. It is outrageously pleasurable and super violent, with an uninspired sense of gory extravagance depicted in a lovingly, unapologetic, favorable bias. Bonnie and Clyde is basically perfect filmmaking at its most meaningful and merry. Bonnie and Clyde is a hypersexual treatise on young love and juvenile fantasy. It is wild, dangerous, and horny. Bonnie and Clyde is also a disturbed film with an emphasis on repressed and homoerotic behavior. Director Arthur Penn put ultraviolence in place of sex acts, adding to his film an erotic juxtaposition of bloodshed and climaxes. It is the ultimate romanticism of sadism. Pistols explode, shafts are stroked, and faces are blown off. Bonnie and Clyde is a film that actively ejaculates blood splatters. Both Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow are incredibly frustrated, not philosophically. They are sexually aggravated, and that manifests itself poetically through philosophical montage. It is by stealing and through murdering, chasing, and running that they experience any sort of sexual release, gratification, or physical contentment at all. Of course, while the crimes are many, they are only temporary satisfactions on the heart pains of hormonal psychopathy. Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow are sex-crazed fiends who find themselves desperately attracted to each other but are helplessly unable to consummate their love, so much so that their repressed frustrations caused one of the most sensational manhunts the world has ever known, at least according to the film. All this over premature erections, luscious young lips, and unparalleled libido. The sexual frustrations of Bonnie and Clyde could be theorized to derive from Clyde Barrow's confusion over his own sexual identity. He can be seen acting far too friendly with a young male member of his gang. He holds him, massages him, and grins in his ear, while Bonnie witnesses his latent homoeroticism. Clyde demonstrates dormant homosexuality in direct juxtaposition to Buck and Blanche Barrow's ceaseless fondling and Bonnie's comparative vexation with them. Bonnie fashions herself as a sex pot, overflowing with untapped and unused sensuality, a true trashy beauty that relentlessly hurls itself at Clyde. Since actual sex is an apparent impossibility, the dangerous arena of bank robberies serve as their ultimate and only method of obtaining sexual pride and forming adult identities. Like any normal young couple that experiences emotions like love in the most heightened and amplified ways, Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow are unique only in that their juvenile pursuit of each other's physicality is so strong and insatiable that it overflows into the real world of stick-ups and lawmen. Clyde's refusal of her may stem from his refusal of self and wild, unseen self-hatred. There are also possible cosmic explanations for the sexual denial and repression found in Bonnie and Clyde, a hypersexual farce without a drop of literal sexual content. It might stand to reason that Bonnie and Clyde needed the bank robberies to operate as sex-driven catalysts in some radical form of newfound psychotherapy. Their attraction to each other is so intense that the bank robberies and other acts of carnage seem to keep them sane. The longer they go without a good murder, the farther apart they drift from each other and the more perilous their relationship seems. The longer they go without actually sleeping together, the harder it is to stay alive. The film's insane sexuality is best rendered visually. Bonnie and Clyde employs some very bizarre editing strategies that effortlessly demonstrate systemic sexual meaning. Bonnie and Clyde is one of the best, or at least most interestingly sequenced films that I have ever seen. Imagine if Sergei Eisenstein assembled the Odessa staircase with a perfect young blonde on his mind and chunks of bloody brain matter on the monitor. This film is visual perfection and one of the ultimate examples of montage. These are symbolic sequences littered with literal, obvious metaphors that are cut in such a way as to transcend immature lust into art house gold. Bonnie and Clyde is systematically meaningful and relentlessly poetic. There is a precise seduction of gestures that takes place throughout Bonnie and Clyde. Bonnie and Clyde takes an equal amount of subtle steps and overtly strenuous leaps to assert sexual meaning. At its most subdued, Bonnie and Clyde is a mating ritual of nervous tics and pseudo-erotic posturing. It brilliantly puts itself through symbolic acrobatics with an emphasis on oral fixations. Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow constantly need to be doing something with their mouths. Good lord, their combined sexual energy is like an atomic bomb. It explodes everywhere in fiery excursions like fireworks over some abysmal plain. Their love takes the form of a traveling circus, a comedy of errors and a tragedy of desires. Making love and making war are one and the same. It's worth noting that the violence of Bonnie and Clyde is reflective of youthful, inexperienced lovemaking. It is wholly ultra-violent, unprofessional, often exploding fast and shockingly, accompanied by giggles and worried gasps, and edited in half-second sequential busts and bursts. Bonnie and Clyde is brilliant, genius, and artistically, basically one of a kind. I think it goes without saying that the killers are the heroes in Bonnie and Clyde. The actual villains of the film, and there certainly are legitimate evils in it, are found in anyone older than they are. Age destroys all, especially the process of understanding youth. Bonnie and Clyde's love is something real and palpable to everyone of a certain age group, of a certain demographic. The older the characters are, the more ruinous and potentially damaging they become. Adults are incapable of feeling raw, uninhibited emotions like the ones Bonnie and Clyde experience day to day. With maturity comes resentment of young love and adventure. It's a jealous vendetta against our heroes that finally brings them to their tragic end. Their sexual fantasies have been realized, actualized, and physically rendered. Having finally made love, the couple experiences their final intimacy together. Curiously, while Bonnie and Clyde mixes violence and sex in undifferentiated forms, the death of Bonnie and Clyde is anything but erotic. The film has the good sense to change its attitude, whilst maintaining intimacy, to paint the film in tragic strokes before its ultimate conclusion. Once their love has been consummated, they had no need to use violence anymore to demonstrate their tryst. They needed only more time with each other, that they had the proper tools to physically explore this crazy shared emotion. It is a band of aged, repressed men, emotionless and awful, that betray them, hunt them, and execute them. They meet an overkill that in the executioner's mind was meant to mirror their acts of violence in some sort of even justice. Instead, all the extra bullets illustrated a tragedy so deep that you are left with the images of a love tortured and savagely stalked by ugly old men who could never possibly understand their anarchy. It is because of Bonnie's kiss, something any normal man like Clyde would kill for, that sets their executioner off on his depraved and unfeeling course. Bonnie and Clyde are punished because they feel. They are murdered because they genuinely know love. As Clyde Barrow himself, Warren Beatty shines like none other. He not only starred in the film, he produced it, and is nearly solely responsible for the film existing at all. He crafted his character perfectly, presenting Clyde as playful even in times of morally indecent decision-making. Beatty carefully composed his character to maintain a staggering likability throughout, affording Clyde a charismatic quality seldom found in otherwise undesirable individuals. In fact, Beatty and Dunaway's performances elevated the real life duo. He made the criminal a prophet. Beatty seemed to outright enjoy himself, and he ended up giving one of the more legendary performances in the whole of American cinema because of it. Clyde enjoyed robbing banks, he enjoyed running from the law, he enjoyed Bonnie Parker, and he enjoyed dying. Warren Beatty transcended art. No one could have done this other than Faye Dunaway. Absolutely no one. She was outrageous, very, very sexy, and incredibly matched. She seemed to be receiving her cues from the Tennessee Williams School of Trash Acting and startling authenticity. She was perfectly melodramatic, where she symbolically and stylistically needed to be, as well as effortlessly restrained when the film needed it most. She wowed me as Bonnie Parker, and I was thrilled by her performance. Rather than crafting a character that's made up of unseen complexities, Dunaway honed her role into an explosive gallery of raw emotional depth. There's little mystery with Bonnie Parker, while Clyde Barrow's sexual demons continue to mystify. Dunaway put everything she had on the table. She held nothing back and fucking went for it. Dunaway laid down an exceptional performance that was equal parts vicious and vulnerable. Her Bonnie was some sort of bimbo prophet. It was extraordinary to watch. Faye Dunaway is a legend, an artist, and a goddess. Her Bonnie Parker is the cinema's most beautiful loser. Dunaway transcends all. The film is structural insanity. It doesn't follow a conventional pace and insists on blazing its own trail. It never stops. It never lets go of you. It initiates you into the Barrow gang. Bonnie and Clyde demands multiple viewings and incessant worship on account of its total uniqueness. It is youthful and accessible, also curiously majestic and sweeping, anarchistic and anachronistic. Bonnie and Clyde is the most fun you could have with systemic meaning through montage and subtext. This is pure joy, and I love every minute of it. Blood, crime, dumb jokes, shootouts, beautiful people, and poetic meaning. Bonnie and Clyde is my haven. Bonnie and Clyde is a very special film. Bonnie and Clyde doesn't paint its subjects with sympathetic qualities. It drowns them in outright heroism. Bonnie and Clyde is powerful, loud, absurd, romantic, desperate, silly, exciting, symbolic, and awful. It is a kind of perfection. Bonnie and Clyde is numero uno. Bonnie and Clyde is a revolutionary film about outcasts. Bonnie and Clyde is the misfit masterpiece that changed the world. American film would never be the same after Bonnie and Clyde were shot to death. On screen. Not in history. On screen. Symbolically and stylistically, Bonnie and Clyde shaped the modern American cinematic identity. Bonnie and Clyde is one of the ultimate American films. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you.